That internet money of yours will never amount to anything real, my dad said, while my $27,500,000 0 cents transfer was already pending. I didn't argue. I just raised my beer and started quietly changing their lives, one miracle at a time. That internet money of yours will never amount to anything real, my dad said, clinking his beer bottle against Uncle Terry's. The backyard erupted in laughter. My name is Caleb Morgan. I'm 27, and for the past 6 years, I've been building blockchain solutions from a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Tulsa. Not that anyone in this backyard would know or care. Every family gathering ran the same script, polite questions that led nowhere, a few jokes about Bitcoin, a lot of side glances when I mentioned I was still working online. I didn't flinch anymore. I just smiled, nodded, and sipped whatever was in my hand. Let them laugh. What they didn't know was that in my pocket sat the biggest secret of my life. A notification received just yesterday that was still buzzing in my head like static electricity. Final acquisition offer. Signed, $27,500,000, 0 cents. The culmination of 6 years of ramen, secondhand laptops, and 18-hour coding marathons. I'd done it. I'd really done it. And nobody here had a clue. You know, son, my dad continued, leaning in just enough so only I could hear. Brad says they're hiring again at the dealership. Good benefits, easy work. You'd be great with customers. I looked up and saw Brad, my sister's husband, across the yard, showing off his new designer watch to a group of uncles. He caught my eye, raised his wrist a little higher, and gave me that same sympathetic smile he always did, the kind that says, "I know you're trying, bud." I didn't respond. I just took another sip of my beer and looked out over the yard. My niece Lily ran past with a sparkler in her hand. My mom was telling Aunt Laura about her lemon bars. My dad went back to telling old oil field stories like nothing happened. I was used to it. I'd been used to it for years. That night, driving home in my battered 8 Civic, my phone buzzed again. A text from Rachel, my sister. "Don't mind Dad, he just worries about you." I didn't reply. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and kept driving. What they didn't know wouldn't hurt them. Not yet, anyway. When I got home, I pulled out my laptop just to be sure. There it was, the wire transfer, pending. By Monday morning, my bank account would show numbers I used to dream about. More than anyone in that backyard had ever seen. Maybe more than all of them combined. I closed the screen slowly and leaned back in my chair. No music, no celebration, just the hum of the fridge and the muffled bark of a neighbor's dog. I should have felt victorious, triumphant even, but all I felt was quiet. Not sadness, not joy, just quiet. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't trying to prove something. I just was. And in that strange silence, I understood something important. The people laughing at me weren't cruel, they just couldn't see it. They couldn't see what I was building because it didn't look like anything they understood. And maybe that was okay. I taught myself to code when I was 14. It started with a dusty, secondhand laptop my mom bought at a garage sale for $20. The keys stuck, the battery died every hour, the screen had a weird pink line running down the left side. But to me, it was a spaceship. I'd sit on my bedroom floor for hours, hunched over tutorials, pulling apart websites to see how they worked. While other kids played sports or joined clubs, I was chasing lines of logic deep into the night, whispering to myself when the code finally clicked. I wasn't escaping reality. I was building my own. My parents thought it was a phase, like my 3-month obsession with astronomy, or that one summer I tried to teach myself skateboard tricks from YouTube. "He'll grow out of it," they said when relatives asked why I never left my room. But I didn't. Not this time. I graduated high school with decent grades and a stubborn streak. Got into Oklahoma State on a partial scholarship. Majored in computer science because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. The plan was to get an internship, find a good-paying tech job, climb the ladder, make my parents proud. For a while, I even convinced myself that's what I wanted. Then, junior year, I stumbled across a forum thread on blockchain technology. It wasn't just Bitcoin memes and crypto bros. It was math, real problems, elegant solutions, systems that could reshape how people moved money, information, even trust itself. I was hooked in less than a week. I stopped going to parties. Then I stopped going to class. I dropped out that spring. My dad didn't speak to me for 3 months. My mom cried the night I told them. Rachel tried to mediate, but eventually even she stopped defending me during Sunday dinners. I just don't understand why you'd throw away your degree, my dad said when he finally broke the silence. Your grandfather worked in the oil fields for 40 years so his kids could go to college, and now you're quitting school to chase fake internet coins? I tried, once, to explain it. I talked about decentralization, cutting out middlemen, immutable ledgers. My dad looked at me like I was speaking Klingon. My mom just asked if I had enough to eat. That's when I learned. Some dreams can't be translated, not into words they'll understand. So, I stopped trying. I retreated into my tiny apartment with its peeling paint and faulty heater and started building. I took freelance gigs to survive, fixing broken WordPress sites, helping old ladies recover their Facebook passwords, and in every spare moment I worked on the blockchain protocol I couldn't stop thinking about, the one that lived in my head like a song on loop. I didn't care about going viral or raising capital. I just wanted to solve something no one else had solved. While friends got engaged and posted vacation photos from Cabo, I was eating gas station ramen, pulling 16-hour stretches, debugging my own mistakes by flashlight when the power got shut off. I missed weddings, birthdays, whole chapters of people's lives. I told myself it was worth it. But sometimes, late at night, I wondered if I'd made a huge mistake. If maybe my dad was right. If maybe there was nothing at the end of this but more ramen and a pile of invisible code no one cared about. Then, 8 months ago, it happened. I published a white paper online, thinking maybe a handful of crypto nerds would read it. 3 days later, my inbox exploded. Dozens of venture capitalists, engineers from Europe, a woman named Monica Tran from Vertex Capital who asked in a calm, steady voice, "Do you understand what you've built?" I didn't. Not really. I just knew it worked. That was the first time I felt it, the shift. Like the ground under my feet had tilted a little. I didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The first offer came like a glitch in the matrix. 3 weeks after I published my white paper, a venture firm from Berlin emailed me out of nowhere. "We're intrigued by your optimization algorithm," they wrote. "Can we discuss acquisition terms?" I stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. I thought it was a scam. It wasn't. We had a Zoom call the next day. The partner walked me through their interest, their vision, and then dropped the number, casually. $3 million. Just for the rights to use something I'd built in my apartment between frozen burrito dinners and caffeine headaches. I turned it down. It felt too soon, too easy. 6 weeks later, another email. A firm out of Singapore. $8 million. They'd reviewed my code, run simulations, and were ready to move. I turned that down too, not because I thought I could do better, though part of me hoped so, but because it still didn't feel finished. Like selling something before it was fully grown. I didn't tell anyone. Not Rachel. Not even the handful of online friends I'd built over the years. Part of me still thought it would all disappear. That the zeros would vanish like a browser crash. So I stayed quiet. Just kept building. Then Rachel called one night while I was mid-decker. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "Don't freak out, but Dad's been having some health stuff." My fingers froze on the keyboard. "What kind of stuff?" "Shortness of breath, dizziness. Doctor says it might be his heart. They're running more tests. There's a chance he'll need surgery later this year." I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. "Do you guys need help?" There was a pause. "We'll figure it out," she said, but her voice had that edge. Quiet panic hiding under politeness. When we hung up, I opened my email again. Another offer was waiting. $15 million. From a firm I actually admired. I stared at it for a long time. Not because of the money. Not really. I'd lived without money for years. But because, for the first time, the question wasn't about selling a product. It was about whether I could actually do something that mattered. That's the thing no one tells you about success. It doesn't always feel like a win. Sometimes, it feels like standing outside your own house, watching through the windows, wondering when someone will invite you inside. I could have paid for my dad's tests, his surgery, covered every bill they were too proud to ask about, but they wouldn't have taken the money. Not from me. Not from their son who played with internet coins while Brad sold cars and made real commissions. So I sat in my apartment, staring at $15 million I wasn't sure I wanted, and a family I couldn't figure out how to help. And for the first time since I dropped out of college, I didn't know what to do next. 2 days before the family reunion, I sat in front of my laptop, wearing the same hoodie I'd worn for 4 days straight, staring at 5 faces on a Zoom call, the final negotiation round. 5 executives from a European firm, all in collared shirts and perfect lighting, making it clear this wasn't a game anymore. Our final offer, the CEO said, is $27.5 million. We'd also like to retain you as a consultant 2 years, $180,000 annually. You'll retain limited rights to future iterations, and your name will stay on the original white paper. I asked for an hour to think. They nodded. When the screen went dark, I sat still for a while, hands frozen over the keyboard, hearing nothing but the tick of the wall clock in my kitchen and the thrum of my own heart. I didn't call anyone. Didn't text Rachel, didn't even pace. I just got up and walked. Out the door, down the block, past kids riding scooters and a woman trimming her rose bushes. Past families in driveways and teenagers blasting music from car speakers. I saw the world they lived in, grounded, visible, ordinary, and realized, again, that I had built something completely invisible. Something no one around me had seen or believed in, but something that was now, somehow, worth more than I'd ever imagined. When I got home, I didn't think twice. I sat down, opened the document, signed my name, and clicked Submit. The screen blinked. Confirmation. Wire transfer initiated. I was now, officially, a multi-millionaire. I closed the laptop, walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood in silence. No cheers, no champagne, just the hum of the refrigerator and the street lamp flickering outside my window. 6 years of my life had led to this moment. 6 years of coding through holidays, skipping weddings, nodding politely while my dad asked if I'd considered working at Brad's dealership. And now that it had all paid off, now that I'd reached the mountain I had fought so hard to climb, I felt nothing but the wind. It wasn't disappointment. It wasn't joy. It was the absence of both. A strange, quiet middle place where victory felt weightless and invisible. I should have told someone, should have picked up the phone and said, "You won't believe what just happened." But the only people I wanted to tell were the ones who never believed in me, and somehow that made it all feel even lonelier. I stood at my window until the sky turned from orange to gray. Then I turned off the lights and went to bed, wondering how it was possible to have everything I'd ever wanted and still feel like no one would ever really see me. The backyard smelled like grilled meat and cheap beer. Kids screamed from the kiddie pool, uncles shouted over card games, and someone had brought out a Bluetooth speaker that blasted classic rock like it was 1985. I stood near the fence, plastic cup in hand, nodding politely while my Aunt Diane asked, "Again?" if I'd ever considered taking the postal exam. "It's stable," she said. "Good benefits. Not glamorous, but that's not everything, right?" I smiled, the same way I always did. Said I'd think about it. She patted my arm like I was 12 and wandered off. Across the yard, my dad was holding court by the grill, beer in hand, retelling a story about a flat tire on I-44 like it was a heroic war story. Brad, my sister's husband, stood beside him, nodding with just enough enthusiasm to make my dad feel important. Brad's new watch caught the sunlight, reflecting a sharp glint that hit me square in the eye. He saw me watching, raised his wrist a little, and winked. It wasn't smug, just expected. He was winning at the game my family understood. No one asked about my work, not really. Just the usual vague jokes. Sold any imaginary coins lately? Or still playing with that crypto stuff? They said it with a laugh, but the same laugh they gave the cousin who tried stand-up comedy once and flopped. I used to feel the need to correct them, to explain. I'd try to talk about the underlying tech, about how blockchain wasn't about hype, but about systems and transparency. But their eyes would glaze, and someone would change the subject, and I'd be left standing there with half a sentence and a full heart no one could read. But this time, I didn't try. I didn't explain. I didn't pull out my phone and show them the wire transfer receipt, or the signed contract, or the fact that, by Monday, I'd be worth more than every person at this reunion combined. I didn't say a word. Because this time, I wasn't there to prove anything. As the sun dipped behind the neighbor's roof, casting the backyard in golden haze, my dad came over and handed me another beer. "You doing okay, son?" he asked, not quite meeting my eyes. I nodded. "Yeah, doing fine." He clinked my cup and walked off, leaving a trace of barbecue smoke and aftershave in his wake. They weren't mocking me because they hated me. They weren't dismissing me out of cruelty. They just didn't know. Couldn't know. Their world was built from things they could touch: metal, sweat, commission slips, pay stubs. Mine was built from code, invisible scaffolding, silent wins. To them, I hadn't changed. Still the kid with the weird laptop, still the one who never settled down, still a question mark on the family chart, and somehow that was okay. I looked around at my family, imperfect, loud, loving in their own clumsy way, and realized something I hadn't before. I didn't need them to understand me. I just needed them to be okay. Maybe that was what real success meant in the end. Not the numbers, not the nods, but the freedom to stand quietly in a yard full of people who never saw it coming and still choose kindness over applause. I left the reunion just after 9, the sky still clinging to the last blush of orange, headlights slicing through the back roads as I drove without music, windows down, letting the wind press against my skin like a baptism. My phone buzzed once on the passenger seat. Jessica, probably checking in again, but I didn't look. I kept driving, up through the hills outside Tulsa, until I reached the overlook I used to visit in college, when the world felt too heavy. I parked, killed the engine, and sat there in the quiet, staring down at the city lights. From up here, Tulsa looked like a circuit board, blinking, ordered, glowing in patterns only machines could read. I thought about the last 6 years. The ramen, the sleepless nights, the doubt, the sting in my father's voice when he said I was wasting my life. And then I thought about Monday morning when that wire transfer would clear and change everything, on paper. But the truth was, something had already changed tonight. At the reunion, I realized, for the first time, that I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to throw my success in their faces or make some grand announcement that would finally win me their respect. Because I didn't need it anymore. What I needed, what I wanted, was something else. I wanted peace. I wanted my dad to stop worrying about bills. I wanted Jessica to know Emma would go to college no matter what happened to Derek's commission. I wanted Uncle Frank to stop pretending that getting laid off at 58 was a blessing in disguise. I wanted to fix the things I could, even if they'd never know it was me. I opened my banking app, stared at the numbers on the screen, numbers I never thought I'd see next to my name, and started a new account. Private, untraceable. Then I pulled out the Notes app and made a list. Mom and Dad, Jessica and Emma, Uncle Frank, even Derek. I knew what I was going to do. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight, quietly, strategically, with the same precision I'd used to build my protocol. One transfer at a time, one debt erased, one future protected. I didn't need them to thank me, I just needed to know that the work I'd done, the hours I'd sacrificed meant something, that it had reached someone, that it had mattered. I stayed on that hill until the wind turned cold and the city lights began to blur. Then I started the engine and drove home. Not to celebrate, not to gloat, but to begin the real work. The invisible kind. The kind that would never make the headlines but would change lives all the same. The kind only someone who'd once been unseen could understand. 3 days after the reunion, I sat across from a woman named Olivia in a minimalist office in downtown Oklahoma City. She wore a gray suit, thin glasses, and had the kind of expression that made you want to tell her the truth, even when you didn't know why. Most people in your position want to make a splash, she said, scanning the documents I'd brought. Ferraris, Gulfstreams, naming rights on hospital wings. I shook my head. That's not me. She tilted her head slightly, almost smiling. No, she said, I can see that. Over the next 2 hours, Olivia walked me through a financial strategy that didn't look like success. It looked like camouflage. Multiple trusts, staggered disbursements, anonymous shell foundations that could funnel money into causes or people without ever revealing the hand behind them. She called it strategic altruism. I called it freedom. We moved carefully. One fund for health emergencies, tied to a fabricated nonprofit that could step in with assistance based on community nomination. Another for education, modeled after scholarship endowments, targeted by zip code, grade level, even dental records. I had thought I was being clever on my own. Olivia's playbook was surgical. I left with a file of new identities, entities, technically, and the tools to change lives without ever attaching my name. And that was the plan. I would stay invisible, let the work speak. A week later, Jessica called. Her voice was shaking. I don't know what's going on, Eli, but she paused. Emma just got a full scholarship for braces. I smiled. That's amazing. And Dad, she continued, that foundation we never applied to, they're covering his surgery. That's a miracle, I said. But Jessica wasn't done. And Derek, his dealership cut commissions last month, right? Well, today he got a job offer. Better pay, better benefits. From a place he didn't even apply to. I sat down. Jess, sometimes things line up. Yeah, she said slowly, except this feels like someone's lining it up. There was a silence. I could hear Emma in the background, laughing at something on the TV. Is this you? Jessica finally asked, her voice low. Are you doing this? I hesitated for half a second too long. No, I said. I'd tell you if it was. It wasn't a full lie. I would tell her. Someday. Just not yet. She exhaled hard. Okay, I believe you. But I knew she didn't. Not really. That was the moment I realized something I hadn't planned for. Helping from the shadows was noble. But shadows don't stay still forever, and sometimes love leaves footprints. Even when you try to stay hidden. 2 days after that call, Jessica rang again, this time without preamble. Eli, she said, voice lower than usual, Derek's convinced someone's pulling strings in our family, and he thinks it's you. I froze, standing in the doorway of my apartment with groceries still in hand. What makes him think that? I asked as evenly as I could. He's been watching, she said. The timing, the way everything started shifting after the reunion. He said you've been calmer, different, like you don't have to worry anymore. I laughed, light and short. That's Derek reading too many detective novels. Maybe, Jessica replied, but he's not wrong. You have been different, quieter, less defensive. She paused. Eli, what's going on? I dropped the grocery bag onto the counter and took a breath. Jess, you're overthinking it. Am I? She said. Because it's not just us. Uncle Frank got a mysterious call last week about a displaced workers support fund, and the next day someone paid off the rest of his mortgage. No explanation, no paperwork. Just cleared. I bit the inside of my cheek. Maybe someone's just trying to help. Exactly, she said. But who? No one in this family has that kind of money, except Jess. Except maybe the one person who keeps saying he's still figuring things out while driving the same old Honda and wearing the same hoodie for 7 years. That made me smile, despite myself. Hey, that hoodie's vintage now. Eli, her voice shifted, gentler this time. If it's you, why not just tell us? I looked out the window. The street was quiet. The wind had picked up. Because it's not about me, I said softly. It's about helping you guys feel like it just worked out, like things aligned for once. But we want to know where the light's coming from, she said. Not because we need to owe anyone, just so we can say thank you, so we can understand you. That line hit harder than I expected. Understand me. That was the thing I hadn't even let myself hope for. Can I ask you something? I said. Do you think Dad would have accepted that surgery if he knew it came from me? She was quiet. No, she admitted. Probably not. That's why. I heard her breathing on the other end, soft and slow. You're trying to be invisible, she said. But you're not. We see you now, Eli. Maybe not all the way, but enough. The call ended without a conclusion. Just that strange, humming space between love and mystery. I stood there in my apartment, surrounded by unopened mail and untouched groceries, wondering if staying in the shadows was still the right move, or if it was time to step into the light and finally let them see everything. The lobby of Olivia's office was quiet, carpeted in the kind of expensive silence that smelled faintly of lavender and old money. I signed in, sat in the same leather chair I'd occupied months ago, and watched the secondhand tick on a minimalist wall clock. When she called me in, her expression was the same, composed, curious, knowing. You're here earlier than I expected, she said, gesturing for me to sit. I take it the plan's working. Too well, I said. She raised an eyebrow. That's rarely a complaint. I told her everything. Jessica's calls, Derek's suspicions, Uncle Frank's confusion. The way the gifts had started to stitch a pattern my family was beginning to follow. I thought staying anonymous would be the cleanest route, I said. Help them, then fade into the background. Olivia steepled her fingers. And now? Now? I'm not so sure. They're starting to feel haunted, like someone's pulling strings behind their lives. You are, she said plainly, with care and good intention, but still pulling strings. I nodded. I just didn't want it to be about me. That's noble, she said, but sometimes when we hide behind our kindness, we deny people the chance to connect with us, to understand us, to grow alongside us. Jessica said something like that, I admitted. That they want to know where the light's coming from, not to worship it, just to say thank you. Olivia leaned forward. Let me ask you something hard, Caleb. Are you protecting your family, or are you still protecting yourself? The question hit deeper than I expected. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe both. You've given them stability, she continued, but connection? That comes from visibility, from honesty, even in small doses. I sat with that, thought about my dad's toast at the farm, the way his voice cracked when he said miracle, the way he'd looked at me across the table, like he wanted to believe, but what are my options? I finally asked. Olivia smiled. Option 1, maintain full anonymity, but space out the gifts, make them feel less orchestral. Option 2, control disclosure, choose 1 or 2 people to let in, let them carry the story, build the bridge, piece by piece. I nodded slowly. And option 3? Full transparency, she said, which I don't recommend, not yet. It sounds romantic, but it tends to collapse under emotional weight and assumptions. People don't always handle sudden truth gracefully, so you're saying I should start small. I'm saying you should start real. That night, I went home and didn't open my laptop. Didn't check balances, didn't schedule any transfers. I sat on the floor of my apartment, lights off, just me and the hum of the fridge. I thought about Emma's braces, about Uncle Frank's house, about the way Derek had looked at me with something close to respect the last time we talked. Maybe it was time, not for a grand reveal, but a quiet opening of the curtain. One voice, one story, one hand held out, not to give, but to finally be held back. We met at a small coffee shop off 14th and Maple, the kind of place with scratched wooden tables and hand-drawn chalk menus, the same shop we used to sit in during college breaks when Jessica needed to vent about Dad's expectations or ask for editing help on scholarship essays. She arrived before me, 2 coffees already on the table, and looked up as I approached, eyes sharp, curious, already knowing. Okay, she said, skipping pleasantries. What's this about? I sat down, took a breath, and slid the folder across the table. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside were legal documents, financial breakdowns, trust outlines, donation records. I let her flip through it in silence, the only sound between us the clink of ceramic and the soft hum of an espresso machine behind the bar. When she reached the scholarship endowment for Emma's school and the notarized paperwork tying it to my name, her hand froze. Ely, she whispered. You did all this? I nodded once. I don't want to hide anymore, I said. But I don't want to turn this into a show either. I exhaled slowly. I need your help telling the story. The right way. She closed the folder gently, then looked at me. Really looked at me. You want to tell Dad? Eventually, I said, but not with a headline or a giant check. I want him to understand, not just that I made it, but how. Why it mattered. Why it took what it took. She nodded slowly. You want him to respect the journey, not just the result. Exactly. So, you came to your older sister, the one who knows how to work a room, she added, smirking. I smiled, something like that. She tapped the folder. This is a lot. It's brilliant, quiet and surgical, and impossibly generous. But it's also going to shake people. Especially Derek. Especially Dad. I'm ready for that, I said. I think. I just needed someone to walk with me through the reveal. Jessica reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. You've been walking alone for too long, she said. It's time. We sat in comfortable silence for a minute, the kind only siblings who've survived childhood and late-night heartaches and awkward holidays can share. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out a notebook, and flipped to a blank page. All right, she said, pen in hand. Let's map this out. Soft landing first, then truth, then the part where you blow everyone's mind, gently. You're seriously making a battle plan? I laughed. Of course, she said. You're the genius. I'm just the PR department. And right then, for the first time since that wire transfer cleared, I felt it. Something bigger than peace. I felt like I was finally coming home. Career day at Emma's middle school wasn't supposed to matter. It was just a favor Jessica asked, a small talk for a room full of 12-year-olds and their half-interested parents. But when I walked into that classroom with a folded laptop under my arm and the name badge that read Eli Granger, software developer, I felt something tighten behind my ribs. Jessica had arranged for our parents to be there too. Just to support Emma, she said. Derek came along out of curiosity. I could feel their eyes as I stood in front of the whiteboard and looked out at the room. 6 years ago, I began, I dropped out of college to build something that didn't exist yet. Some of the parents blinked. Most of the kids looked bored. But I kept going. It was called a blockchain protocol. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but basically, I wanted to make something invisible, faster, safer, more secure. A few kids perked up. One raised his hand and asked if it was like Bitcoin. I smiled, kind of, but under the hood. I worked on it alone. I ate a lot of ramen. I missed birthdays. I failed a lot. People called it internet money. Most of my family didn't understand it. They thought I was wasting my time. I glanced briefly at Dad. He didn't look away. Then, one day, someone noticed, and then another. And eventually, I sold my project to a company overseas for $27,500,000, 0 cents. The room froze. Even the back row parents sat up straighter. I heard someone whisper, "No way." I paused. But that's not the part I'm proud of. The money's fine, sure. But what matters more is that I stayed with it, even when no one believed in it, even when I doubted myself. I finished by announcing a donation, a grant for the school to buy laptops and fund a year's worth of after-school coding programs for any student who wanted to learn. Technology shouldn't be something only rich kids get to touch, I said. It should be a language everyone gets to learn. When I stepped down, Emma ran up and hugged me so hard I almost dropped the laptop. "That was awesome, Uncle Eli," she whispered. "I didn't know you were famous," I smiled. "I'm not. I'm just finally being understood." Afterward, I saw my parents lingering by the classroom door. My mom was crying quietly, my dad's jaw was tight, and he looked like he was holding something heavy in his throat. He approached slowly. 27.5, he said. "That true?" I nodded. "It's closer to 42 now with bonuses," he blinked. "The farm, Emma's braces, my surgery. All me," I said gently. I didn't want to embarrass anyone. I just wanted to help. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he did something I'll never forget. He didn't ask why I kept it from him. He didn't get angry. He just put one hand on my shoulder, looked me in the eye and said, "You did good, son." And I was wrong. Jessica joined us a minute later, eyes shining, and Derek, who'd heard everything, walked over and extended a hand. "Man," he said, shaking his head, "I've been offering you car sales gigs. You were out here building something no one could see." "They were good offers," I replied, "just not my road." And right then, in that hallway, I realized something had changed, not just in how they saw me, but in how they were willing to see what I had chosen all along. Success is strange. It never arrives the way you expect it to. It doesn't crash through the doors with confetti and headlines. It slips in quietly, sometimes while you're doing the dishes or walking home, or sitting in a coffee shop watching your sister flip through a folder that holds the proof of everything you've built. For most of my life, I thought success meant being seen. Loudly, undeniably, universally. I thought it would be a stage, a microphone, a moment where everyone finally understood. But somewhere along the way, I realized that the most powerful kind of success doesn't ask to be witnessed. It doesn't need validation. It just is. It's in the way you keep showing up for something you believe in even when no one claps. It's in the way you create solutions in the dark, trusting that someone, someday, will feel the light. It's in the way you protect your loved ones, not by shielding them from hardship, but by removing it so gently they never feel the edge. When I started this journey, I didn't know where it would lead. I just knew I had to follow it. Through the years of doubt, through the family dinners where my work was a punchline, through the silence that comes when your dreams grow too big to explain. And now, having come out the other side, not with revenge, not with a speech, but with quiet generosity, I've learned the most important lesson of all. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you quietly build into the people around you. It's how you show up when no one is looking. It's the trust you restore, the belief you gently awaken, the paths you make easier for those who come after. I used to want them to know it was me. To look at the new house, the paid-off bills, the scholarship letters and say, "Caleb did that." But I don't need that anymore. What I need is for my dad to walk without pain. For Emma to smile with braces that don't come at the cost of her parents' sleep. For Jessica to believe that hard seasons can still end with spring. For Derek to start learning about blockchain, not to understand me, but to understand himself. And maybe, most of all, for me to finally look in the mirror and not need applause to know I've done something right. I think a lot about the version of me that started this, sitting in a one-bedroom apartment in Tulsa, drinking black coffee at 2 a.m., writing code no one asked for. He wasn't chasing money, he was chasing clarity, a solution, a structure that worked better than what came before. I didn't realize it back then, but that was always the work, not just in technology, but in family, in life, to build something better. Not bigger, not louder, just better, stronger, wiser. And that kind of work doesn't end with a sale. It evolves, it ripples, it teaches. The other night, Dad asked me to explain Ethereum, not because he wanted to invest, but because he wanted to understand something I had spent years caring about. I watched his eyes flicker with curiosity and effort, and something else too, pride that had nothing to do with dollar signs. That moment meant more than the wire transfer, more than the career day applause, because it meant he saw me, not just the son who finally made it, but the man who never gave up. And maybe that's what real success is, being fully seen by the people who matter most. Not when you win, but when they realize you were never lost to begin with. Just walking a different road, quietly, steadily, faithfully. And maybe helping them find new ground too. If you've made it this far, maybe something in this story resonated with you. Maybe you've walked your own quiet road, built something no one else saw, or simply believed in a version of yourself that others couldn't yet understand. We tell stories like this because we believe quiet strength matters, because not all victories are loud. If that's the kind of truth you value, you're welcome here. There are more stories waiting, and we'd be honored to share them with you. Until then, keep building, even if no one claps just yet.